What's up, history lovers? Welcome back to the channel where we break down fascinating historical events in just 5 minutes. Today we're tackling one of the most beloved but historically inaccurate movies ever made. Mel Gibson's Braveheart from 1995. You know that epic scene where William Wallace screams, "Freedom!" before his execution? Yeah, that never happened. And those blue face paints? Completely wrong time period. But here's the thing. The real story of William Wallace is actually way more incredible than anything Hollywood could dream up. So if you're loving this historical content, make sure to hit that subscribe button for more 5-minute history videos. Now let's dive into the real story of Scotland's greatest hero. Let me introduce you to the real William Wallace and forget everything you think you know from the movie. First off, he wasn't some dirt-poor farmer who got revenge after his wife was murdered. The historical William Wallace was actually from a minor noble family. His father was a landowner in Renfrewshire. We don't know much about his early life, but what we do know is that by 1297, he had already emerged as one of the leaders of the Scottish resistance against English rule. And here's the kicker, he wasn't fighting alone. Wallace had a co-commander named Andrew Moray, who was actually from an even more prominent noble family. But Hollywood completely wrote him out of the story. Wallace was probably educated, possibly even knew Latin, and was definitely not the wild Highland warrior that Mel Gibson portrayed. He was more like a medieval politician and military strategist. And those iconic kilts and blue face paint? Kilts weren't invented until the 16th century, and the blue face paint was from Celtic tribes over 1,000 years before Wallace's time. Now let's talk about the Battle of Stirling Bridge in September 1297, the victory that made William Wallace a legend. But here's what the movie got completely wrong. It wasn't fought in an open field. It was fought at a narrow stone bridge. The English army, led by the Earl of Warenne and Hugh de Cressingham, had about 9,000 men, including heavy cavalry. The Scottish army? Maybe 6,000 men, mostly infantry with basic weapons. On paper, this should have been a massacre. But Wallace and Moray had a brilliant plan. They positioned their army on the north side of the River Forth and waited. The English had to cross a narrow bridge that could only fit 2 or 3 horses side by side. Wallace let half the English army cross, then attacked when they were split in 2 by the river. The English cavalry was trapped. They couldn't maneuver properly and couldn't retreat quickly. The result was devastating. About 5,000 English soldiers were killed, including the hated Hugh de Cressingham. Legend says the Scots made a belt out of his skin. The English army was so thoroughly defeated that they retreated all the way back to Berwick. In one day, Wallace and Moray had liberated most of Scotland. After Stirling Bridge, William Wallace was knighted and became Guardian of Scotland, essentially the ruler of an independent Scottish kingdom. But here's where the story gets tragic, and the movie gets it wrong again. Andrew Moray, Wallace's co-commander and the tactical genius behind Stirling Bridge, was mortally wounded in the battle and died by November 1297. This left Wallace to face the English alone, and he just didn't have the same strategic brilliance that Moray had possessed. As Guardian, Wallace did something remarkable. He started corresponding with other European powers, declaring Scotland's independence and seeking alliances. He even wrote to the Pope. This wasn't some barbaric warrior. This was a sophisticated medieval diplomat trying to get international recognition for Scottish independence. But King Edward I of England, known as Longshanks, was not about to let Scotland go. He returned from his campaigns in France with a massive army of about 15,000 men, including thousands of Welsh longbowmen and heavy cavalry. Wallace could only muster about 6,000 men to meet him. The Battle of Falkirk in July 1298 was where Wallace's luck ran out. Unlike Stirling Bridge, this was fought in open terrain that favored the English heavy cavalry and longbowmen. The Scottish nobles, who had never fully trusted Wallace because of his relatively humble origins, betrayed him by fleeing the battlefield. Wallace's army was slaughtered. He escaped, but his reputation was destroyed. He resigned as guardian and spent the next 7 years as a hunted man, traveling through Europe trying to drum up support for Scottish independence. In 1305, Wallace was finally captured near Glasgow and taken to London for trial. And here's where the movie actually gets something right. His execution was absolutely brutal. He was hanged, drawn, and quartered for high treason, which was the standard punishment for traitors to the English crown. But did he shout freedom before his execution? Almost certainly not. Medieval chroniclers would have recorded such a dramatic moment, but there's no historical evidence for it. The real William Wallace probably died in agony without any Hollywood heroics. So what's the real story? William Wallace was a brilliant military commander who achieved one of the most stunning victories in medieval warfare at Stirling Bridge. He was a sophisticated politician who tried to secure Scottish independence through diplomacy as well as warfare. And he was ultimately a tragic figure who was betrayed by his own nobles and executed by his enemies. The movie Braveheart turned him into a Hollywood action hero, but the real William Wallace was something much more interesting. A medieval freedom fighter who used his brain as much as his sword. His real legacy isn't about screaming freedom. It's about proving that with clever tactics and determination, even the underdog can win. And that's the real story behind one of Hollywood's most historically inaccurate movies. So what's the real story? If you enjoyed this deep dive into medieval Scottish history, smash that like button and subscribe for more 5-minute history videos. Drop a comment below what other historically inaccurate movies should I tackle next. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.